Today we are talking about Payday Super. We're joined today by Nadia Bildjern. She is the head of our bookkeeping division and financial control, understands so much of the detail that's happening in that world, not just from a compliance and rules and regulation perspective, but all the tools that are in play from a software side of things too. So Nadia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you hi everyone.
I'm just going to sort of mention a bit of housekeeping at the top here. Put your questions into the chat. This is a shorter format to our usual webinars. We do these every now and then. This is an express webinar or a mini. It's not a masterclass. We will try and get to questions, but please put them into the chat. That's where we're going to find them. If we don't answer your questions, what we're going to do this time around, we're actually going to grab all the questions from the chat and in a follow-up email after this event, if you've registered and so you're watching this back on replay, or those are on today, you'll be able to, we'll do an FAQ based on the questions that we get today. So if we don't get to your question, I apologize in advance. We probably won't be able to answer them all, but we'll come to you after the event. Of course, we always send around the video after the event as well, so that will be available for you to watch through and share around with your team. We're going to run a couple of polls. We're also going to talk about some events we've got coming up as well. I will say, obviously, we've had a massive announcement in the recent federal budget about tax changes coming through the system, plus capital gains, negative gearing, some really key pillars that are going to be changing. Please do not ask questions about that today. This is about Payday Super. We're running a separate webinar next week just to cover the landscape of what's happening there. We don't have all the detail yet anyway. We need to see legislation before we can really start to get into the tactical side of how we'll deal with those changes. But please keep your eye out for that event that's coming. So let's get into it. For those who don't know about Xact, very, very quickly, we have 4 separate services that we offer: tax and structuring, or tax and compliance. It's all about protecting your personal assets and minimizing the amount of tax you need to pay through structuring and essentially using all of the options that we have available to us to do things in a compliant way, but to really minimize your tax burden. Bookkeeping, I've sort of talked about that already, and Nadia is here representing the bookkeeping today. We run a financial control, an outsourced financial control and CFO service as well, a fractional service there. That team will produce the monthly reporting pack for you. They'll actually do a month-end close, so WIP adjustments and journals and that sort of work that I think is a real stretch if you're trying to do that sort of stuff yourself or in-house, or with someone who isn't a specialist and doesn't have that real commercial accounting experience. So we do that for builders and tradies once they reach the scale where they're really starting to need that next level of support. Okay, today's agenda. So we're going to go through what is this change. So what's it about? We're going to go through what the rules are that we're now going to have to comply with, what that actually looks like in practice in your business, and then what the cash flow implications. And there's already been some discussion around this in the market around the Payday Super thing actually being a lot of a challenge for businesses from a cash flow perspective. So we're going to break that down a little bit. And then we'll talk about some resources that we've got available to people to follow up on. Okay, so just quickly, I'm really keen to find out where everyone is currently at on their super Payday Super readiness. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you for Payday Super? This is interesting. I mean, Nadia, I think the first time we ran this, we actually had a lot of people who were already 10 out of 10 ready to go.
Yeah.
So maybe the webinar was to help them feel like they haven't missed anything in the process. We did have a spread of people, though, some people who are really I haven't really even considered it all yet. So we expect it'll be a little bit the same again this time round, although hopefully lots of people who are ready to go. I'll end that poll, um, sharing the results. So it is a spread, and actually we've got got a number of people who are getting there. I think is safe to say, a spread across the 1 to 10 there. All right. So we'll close that out and let's get going. So start with Nadia. Let's just talk at a helicopter level. What is this change? What are we going from a super perspective to as of the 1st of July?
Yeah, so currently super is being paid quarterly on the 28th day of the month after the end of the quarter. This is now changing to being paid on the same day as when payroll is processed, and it has to drop into the super funds within 7 days. So the gap is definitely a lot smaller between that when you're paying payroll and when you're doing the superannuation payments.
Excellent. So we're moving from a quarterly model, and in a way, being able to accumulate that super amount, and sometimes people are using that for other things, working capital, etc. But it's now we're going to, from the 1st of July, every time a pay run occurs, we're having to pay super alongside it.
Yeah.
So what are the core rules then that people will need to adhere to when it comes to how the super payment's going to have to work?
So basically, the super it has to drop into the super funds within 7 days after paying it. So it's not when you pay, when the money leaves your bank account. It is when it actually appears in the super funds, and it has to be processed on the same day as you do your payroll because you're filing STP and that stuff. It can take a few days for the money to actually appear in the super funds, although it takes 24 hours to leave your bank account. So just be mindful of that. Sort of time lapse with that, and the clock keeps ticking from day one. So it's just more admin load really, and getting that additional process going as part of your pay run.
That's right. And so it's 7 days, not from when you make the payment. It has to be when it actually hits the fund.
And
it
has to hit the fund at day 7 latest since you paid your payroll.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so in terms of then I guess we do get this question from time to time, and it may be sitting in the back of people's heads. What happens if I don't do this? How are they even going to know? I guess our experience is, and everything we understand from the ATO, is that their level of sophistication now around matching data is better than it's ever been. So there's a whole lot of ways that they can now match that data to discover whether this is occurring or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Through single touch payroll, everything is being reported to the ATO. And then obviously there's data matching between the ATO and the super funds as well, between Services Australia, all across these different organizations. So everything is being data matched. And with all the AI now in place, really nothing can slip through the cracks anymore. So it's really just getting used to those better habits now to just stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a good reason to do so. And then, I mean, I know it feels like we're the police when we talk this stuff through, Nadia, but really, I guess we're just hoping that, people can be aware of obligations and how the rules work, etc. And so that extends also to this traffic light system that's been set up around the way penalties will work. Do you want to just give us just a brief high level of that?
Yeah, so the ATO is going to use this traffic light system. At the moment, when you pay your super late, you have to lodge an HTC statement to report the late payment. And then that is not tax deductible. At the moment, it's $20 admin fee per employee, and then additional general interest charge that accrues daily on top of that. That is going to change, where it's going to have an admin fee of up to 60% of the amount that you owe to the super fund. However, that will scale up depending on how many times you're a repeat offender not paying those supers on time. That will definitely increase over time. And then obviously, if there are repeat offenders that don't pay their super on time, there will be additional penalties. They can actually hold directors liable. And then ongoing non-compliance can also result in further penalties, which will be quite significant.
Yeah, and I think the penalties sort of align with how the ATO and I think broadly governments feel about super, and
Yeah.
that being a really key entitlement for people. And so therefore the penalties are designed to really make it very clear that this is
Mm.
not an optional thing. It must be paid.
I
Okay.
think the one thing where the ATO was being a little bit nice from the 1st of July is if you do pay it late and you report a SGC statement, that late payment will then be tax deductible.
Yes.
However, the penalties, the admin and the interest will not be. So
Yeah.
that's probably a little bit different then, but you will have to do an SGC statement every time you pay super late. So there will be those additional charges. And if you have an accountant or a bookkeeper that does that SGC statements for you, there will be that additional charge as well, potentially. So it will just cost more, really, if it's
Yeah,
not
that's
paid.
right. Yeah, it is good. I mean, it used to be that if you had a late super payment, it wasn't then you couldn't treat it as deductible. That's not the case anymore from July, which is good. But obviously, this penalty system is all designed to make sure you're very aware that you must pay it and it must be paid on time.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does this look like in practice? That's the sort of, I guess, the regulatory framework we're working to. But when it comes to actually implementing this in your systems and across the business, walk us through, I guess, the key pieces that we need to be aware of in terms of how the process is going to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, now's really the time to really validate all the super funds for your employees. If you have a few new ones that have recently come on board and you're still chasing them for super fund details, maybe chase a bit harder. Or if you have already filed a payroll via STP for them, that relationship between employer and employee has already been established with the ATO. So you can then request the stapled super fund details from the ATO through the portal. The stapled super fund details is the employee's existing super fund details that follow them from one employer to the other, and the ATO has access to that details. If your employees choose to go onto your default super fund that you choose for your company, then you need to set them up as well on that. If you don't have a default super fund set up yet, maybe look into that. You're going to have to enroll into your own default super fund. You can choose any industry fund for that. If there is any rejected payments recently that bounced back when you recently did a super payment, definitely look into that, investigate that as soon as possible so you can get the correct super fund details up to date for those employees.
I think that's
Because
a
you're gonna,
really critical one there, Nadia. Sorry, just to jump in there,
yeah.
because I think there's one of the big changes is going to be, yeah, so it needs to land in the fund. So
Mm,
how do I know it's actually hit the fund?
mm.
So maybe if we could just unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So if you process a super batch payment through your payroll system or through Xero, it will give you a status update of that super batch. It will say that it's been processed, and then you need to just check your bank account as well. Check your bank statement daily. We usually do that after we've processed a super batch payment for a client. We check it 1 or 2 days after just to make sure the whole batch has cleared the bank account. And then check that in Xero because you won't get really prompted. You might get an
No.
email from Xero. Xero sometimes sends an email, but if you use any other systems, they might also do that. Then just investigate that as soon as possible. Often rejected super fund payments is potentially a merger of
Yeah.
two funds. That can happen, and often the employees are not aware that their super funds have merged with another fund. And then what happens in that instance is the USI number changes, which is the product that their money is invested in, but their membership number don't change. So, and employees are not aware of it. So when we see a rejected super fund, the first thing we do is we go and request stapled super fund details from the ATO, because usually the ATO will have that updated USI. If that doesn't work, we do a bit of research because it's usually in the news when two funds merge, and you should be able to find the new USI number that way. or you can ask your employee just to phone up their super fund and get the details.
Yeah. So from a process point of view, I think this is probably one of the biggest gotchas in the whole
Mm,
thing is really now having to have this process in place, probably, for new employees to make sure that those details that you've been supplied actually worked and were
yeah,
valid.
yeah.
But it's not just about new employees because of these fund mergers and other matters that can affect
Mm,
things without even the knowledge sometimes of
mm,
the employee. So having this process in place where you're doing this checking process after
mm.
you've made payment, so that you can be sure that it's actually cleared properly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then maybe talk through the concept of the clearinghouse as well and the timing around that.
Yeah, so the clearinghouse Xero uses its own clearinghouse where you can then do batch payments into that clearinghouse, and the clearinghouse will then distribute the funds from there. Because of the money going through that clearinghouse, there can be up to a 5 workday delay for the money to actually appear in the super funds, and therefore it's better practice to pay the super on the same day as payroll. It will leave your bank account probably 24 hours, 48 hours after you've done the process, but it will drop into the super funds within that 5-day period. But that way you are sure that you won't go over the 7 days.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Okay. Just on the chat, we're getting some questions coming through, but if you're comfortable to, I think it'd be good to drop the questions into the chat for everyone to see, because then we can kind of see and others can see the sort of questions that have been asked already. And it's a safe room here, guys. You're all, amongst friends, I'm sure. So feel comfortable to share those questions. There's no such thing as a silly question in our world. Where I ask them all the time, don't I, Nadia?
Well,
Okay,
we all learn.
absolutely. Okay, so let's just step it through now in terms of what this kind of workflow actually looks like from a step-by-step process.
Yeah, so the pay run in Xero is pretty much the same. The Xero has had some updates recently. At the bottom where you process or extract your ABA file, where you say pay run, you can extract the ABA file. Just below that is now the new option where you pay super. When you click on that, it will just redirect you to the superannuation page, to the accruals page. We just noticed in this week now,
Mhm.
actually, that that page looks a little bit different. So Xero recently had a small update there. It's still very user-friendly. It's still easy to follow. It will actually show you what is due for that period. So I think it's going to make it quite a lot easier. You don't have to guess what figures you have to pay. It will give you the number what is due to pay in that batch. From there, once you've processed it, I would say the next day, just check your bank statement, because bank feeds come into Xero 24 hours later, or you can go on your bank online. Just have a look to see whether that money has left your bank account. It can be 48 hours, depending what day of the week. If you did it on a Friday afternoon, it might only be Monday or Tuesday. And then just keep an eye on the status of that batch in Xero. If anything bounces back, Xero should send you an email notification. So I know that everybody's busy and probably not always paying attention to sort of marketing stuff, but when you receive a Xero email, always pay attention and just check, because it might be related to a bounce super fund that needs your attention immediately. Once you get that, quickly, do the update of the super fund details, get the correct details either through stapled fund, or ask your employee to contact their fund and get the correct details and process it ASAP, because the 7-day clock is still ticking. It doesn't
Yes.
start over the 7.
Yeah.
You then at that stage you're already 3-4 days in, and the
Yeah.
clock is still ticking.
Yeah. So we've kind of color coded this. The green bits. Look, it is a change, but it's not a significant change in a way from a processing point of view. For those who are already processing super, it's not a big step outside what you're currently doing. So it's sort of, we just have to do it when we're processing our pay runs. The big change really here is really a timing thing, and so therefore, the red dots are the in a way, the new process. I think we always needed to make sure that this super was clearing, but because of the timing piece, we need to be on
Mm-hmm.
it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that we can kind of sort of, come back to in a couple of days' time. The clock is ticking. So we really need to make sure that this is in the world of, bookkeeping and compliance, and, making sure that you've got, all your systems and processes in place. This is one of those that needs to be running, like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
getting a few questions here where people are asking, when does that 7-day clock start? Does it start at the last day of the pay run period, or does it start from the day it's paid? So if your pay run period ends on a Friday, but you're processing and paying wages on a Monday, the 7-day clock starts on a Monday. It starts because all payroll data is reported on payment date.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's important. So it's the date of payment
Mm.
that the clock starts ticking. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I just wanted to do a little side shift now into one of the main curveballs, and we've already had some questions about this as well, is, how, it is quite different. In construction, we've got a lot of subcontractors in play, and so the way we pay subcontractors is often quite different to the way we're paying normal employees. We're doing it to an invoice, those kinds of differences. So we're not going through today whether you should or shouldn't, and which subcontractors you should be paying super to. That's a whole other webinar. We've got some good information on our website as well. And really, ultimately, we can help you with that information. It's up to you to make the final call as to whether that subcontractor is eligible for super or not. So this information is really designed around those subcontractors that we do need to be paying super, and some considerations around that. So maybe, Nadia, just take us through this subcontractor lens.
Yeah, so your subcontractors that are eligible for superannuation payments, on that 7-day clock for the subcontractors will start on the day that you pay their invoice. So a lot of clients at the moment that we see are paying subcontractors randomly when the bill is due for payment. So when they invoice you, probably 7 or 14 days after. It's a good idea to talk with your subcontractors now and get into a good cycle where you only run subcontractor payments on a set day of the week. We've got some clients that are really good at that, where they do their subcontractor payments on a Tuesday, all of them all at once. Subcontractors all get paid. Superannuation is processed on the same day, because you're going to have to run a separate unscheduled payroll for those subcontractors where you report only the superannuation amount, which you're going to have to manually calculate, by the way. That's a bit of work on the side. With no earnings on that payroll, so that you can process it through the automatic super in Xero. So just to ease the admin load and not having to do multiple superannuation payments throughout the week, it's probably something to consider right now to streamline all of that into a 7-day cycle on the same day. Probably the subbies would appreciate it because they'll know when they get paid as well.
Yeah, so I guess at a headline level, if you're paying super to a contractor at the moment, it becomes payday super for them as well. So
Yeah.
there's not this distinction between, an employee or a subcontractor. If super is being paid, it's now going to payday. And so payday for a subcontractor who's invoicing you is when you pay the invoice. And so, we've got a lot of different clients in a lot of different states when it comes to, how they're handling this sort of stuff. I guess the more organized ones, if I can use that word, have already aligned their payment cycles so that, they've got employee pay runs happening at a certain point, and they've got their contractors, their subcontractors being paid at a certain point. And it's part of the negotiation, the discussions with the subcontractor around how you operate as a business. Now, there's a whole raft of other issues around that, and you may have strategic subcontractors that, for a range of reasons, they're just not going to play ball like that. And he's the best tiler in town, and you can't get another one. He only gets paid this way. So all we're saying is that really, if you're paying super to them at the moment and they're eligible for super, then as soon as you pay that invoice, you need to be paying the super component as well. Nadia,
And
uh,
I would, sorry,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I was going to ask because I know you did say it, but I wouldn't mind just saying it again. Just that process around, how we do a super payment
Mm.
for contractors because it is a little bit different.
Yeah. So you're going to have to run a separate payroll for your subcontractors based on the invoice amounts. Now there's a bit of admin work on the side you're going to have to do outside of Xero, just calculating what needs to be what figures you have to calculate super on. So obviously not the full total invoice amount. You need to not include GST because you're going to pay too much super. And also, if some subbies would also include materials on their invoices, you have to separate the materials out only on the labor hours, excluding GST. You have to calculate that 12%. So there's a little bit of work on the side. Then you need to do the separate pay run for your subbies, where you create the payroll in Xero, no earnings on the pay slips, only recording that figure for the superannuation.
Yeah,
When you do that, that is actually going to be added to your superannuation accruals list in Xero, and you can include those subby amounts with the rest of your employees in one batch. So, I mean, it would be great if you could align your subcontractor payments on the same day as payroll. However, it's not always possible. Some clients have 100 employees and
yeah,
50 subcontractors. It's just too much workload in one day.
yeah.
But it's fine if you have 2 separate days of the week. But that is how it will look like in Xero, just through that unscheduled payroll.
All right, that was good. I'm glad we kind of like got into the weeds a little bit there. I think they're the sort of things that people really need to know. So, okay, cash flow impacts. It is a real thing. I'm just going to blitz through this. So, I mean, the challenge from a cash flow perspective in construction, the business model is all project accounting. So, we've got lumpy progress claims coming through. We're already dealing with a whole host of cash flow issues. I did probably want to just focus in on so that we can kind of keep this moving, Nadia.
Mm,
I mean, we've got employees kind of or subbies. We've also got casual workers. There's almost an element of transient workers in the
mm.
industry and people coming in and out of projects, etc. So that's an issue. But just can you talk us through this variable payroll and payroll adjustment piece? Because that's something that is
Yeah.
we do need to tidy up, I think.
I see this happening a lot, and I think somebody in the chat actually asked that question where
Yeah,
the trades don't always do their timesheets on time, or they make a mistake, miss out 1 hour, 2 hours. I think really now's the time to sort of bed down the disciplines so that they can get more used to doing the timesheets on time. Maybe having those conversations with them right now that they're going to have to streamline the timesheet processing, because every time that you have to do a payroll adjustment after you've already done your payroll for the week, that is another superannuation process you're going to have to do.
yeah,
So your admin load is going to be massive. If you do your payroll usually on a Wednesday, but Thursday and Friday, you have some trades coming in, but I haven't been paid for this, or I forgot these hours. Maybe have that conversation, we're going to have to streamline things. If you miss it with 1 hour or 2 hours, maybe have sort of a reasonable amount of hours that you agree on and say we'll carry it over to the next week or something like that, because you can't really withhold the payment,
yeah,
but just have those conversations because it's going to be additional workload for you, and things are going to slip through the cracks. You're potentially going to miss that super payment for that 2 hours that you had to process on Thursday after pay run, and then you forget about it. 7-day clock is ticking and you've got an SGC statement situation happening.
yeah. So we're really going to have to be disciplined about these,
Mm.
ad hoc. I missed a few hours here. Can we just pay it now? You do need to pay it, but try and align it with when your ordinary pay runs are happening. Okay. The challenge is very real. I mean, I think we've had businesses have had this ability to be able to, accrue super over the quarter. The more disciplined ones have had it in a separate account and those sorts of things. So it's been sort of provisioned and quarantined. But,
Mm.
other businesses have really almost had it as, extra funds in the business that they've been able to deploy. That's not going to happen anymore. I think, though, I mean, we always like to try and find a bit of a silver lining. In some ways, this is going to be not a bad thing, although there's the admin burden. But from a cash flow perspective, this weekly clear out or fortnightly, whenever your pay run is occurring, of the super entitlements as well, is almost just a way of forcing us all into better cash flow behaviour, so that there's no kind of danger of those funds being deployed and they're not being available when they need to be, and putting you in a position where you've got an issue with the ATO. So there is a small silver lining to this, and obviously, that's why the regulations have been designed that way. Just in terms of where we're at from a timeline perspective right now, if we could just briefly talk that through, Nadia. We've got April to June, May, June requirements coming up now, and then we've got Payday Super kicking off from July. So just talk us through briefly this timeline now.
Yeah, so your June quarter super batch payment will still be due on the 28th of July. Now, keep in mind that's when it needs to be in the super fund, not when you need to push that button. So probably do it earlier in July. So that's just for this financial year. It's still going to be a quarterly batch, but you're going to have a little bit of that bottleneck in the beginning of June, where you're going to July, sorry, where you're going to have your June quarter and then immediately start with your July payday super. So what we do for our clients is we would do a super batch payment for the June quarter, sort of mid-June, so that they can get the maximum tax benefit from it, tax deduction for this financial year. And then whatever's left over for that June month, we'll do in July, which will probably be included within the first payroll in the July payroll with Payday Super. And then from there, it should just even out.
Yeah. So we're going to have those, that burden of the June quarter that we're going to have to deal with, and I think it's a good kind of practice to try and clear the decks in a way, and get that maximum benefit from a financial year perspective, in terms of those payments being deductible as well.
A lot of our clients, if I can just add as well, a lot of our clients have actually now, for this last quarter of financial year, they've actually opted to pay their super monthly. So they're doing April, May, June separately, just to spread out and help with the cash flow a bit, and in preparation for that.
Yeah. Okay. So what should you do now? So there's some things that you need to probably have a think about changing in the business and from a communications perspective. So, I mean, a lot of the industry operates on a weekly payroll cycle. It might be, just because of the additional administrative burden we've got in play here, it might be time to start thinking about fortnightly or even monthly. I know that's not going to work for everyone. So obviously, each business is different, different dynamics, but maybe it's time to think about that. As Nadia talked about, this dedicated subby pay run, if you're not already, if you don't already have that discipline in place at the moment, you don't have that arrangement in place with your subbies, it really is time to start thinking about consolidating, that from a payment timing perspective. The ad hoc payments, like a top up because I missed a few hours here and that sort of stuff, we're really going to have to try and work that out of the way you're doing things now, because if you do it, you're going to have to pay super as well. And the chances, I think, of missing that super piece, I think, are just too high. So it's just a bit of hygiene there in terms of how the team is treating timesheets and things like that, and how you're then paying. Communication, getting the team together to however you do that in the business, toolbox meetings, all the rest of it. It's the time to just let everyone know. A lot of employees still do not know that these changes are coming. So we really need to let them know that this is going to be occurring and the implications for the business around it. So, updated super fund details, all of those sorts of things that the team need to know about it. As we talked about, trying to finalise the June quarter as much as you can before July, so you don't have that additional cash component happening in the July, in July as well. And obviously the tax deduction piece as another consideration. And Nadia, I mean, we already have quite a few clients who are doing Payday Super now. They sort of bit the bullet and went, look, it's going to happen in July. I don't need to wait till July. I can do it now.
Yeah.
And so it's probably, I mean, like you said, doing it as a monthly, even to break it up rather than quarterly, or
Mm,
even just starting to implement the discipline now so that those additional processes that we need to consider are already
mm,
in play and you're not doing it from July 1
mm.
when the clock really starts ticking.
Yeah, yeah. So this, if you started now, really, you're doing yourself a favor because it's a bit of a practice run, and you
Yeah.
still have that grace period for the June quarter that will be due only in July, so you don't have that 7 day clock. Whereas when you started in July, I think people are going to panic a little bit more.
Yeah.
So just consider
100%.
that. Yeah.
Yes. We have enough to panic about in life. Let's try and move this one off. So, the checklist to close out, review payroll processes now. Yeah, so it's time to get this stuff sorted now, not in July. Include those processes around how to check whether the super is actually cleared or not. The automatic super and accounting software. So I think, Nadia, people still don't have that set up
Mm.
sometimes.
Yeah, so the ATO Small Business Clearinghouse will be completely closed at 30 June. So
Yeah,
that won't be an option anymore. So definitely the smoothest way to pay your superannuation, also reconcile it properly, is to enroll your zero file for automatic super. I see a lot of new clients come to us where they haven't done that yet. It's been available in zero for quite a number of years already, and it works really well. And that's also the only payment that you can actually push through zero
yeah.
that will clear your bank. It's very, very user friendly. It makes reconciliations much easier. So definitely have a look at that if you aren't doing it already.
If you don't have a cash flow forecast in place at the moment, we're going to provide a template for that as part of the email out that we do. But obviously, if you do, you need to start to factor in the changes to when this money is now going to flow out of the business. And, a payroll buffer so that super is always available. So really just making sure that we are properly accounting for the super component as part of the pay run. We didn't have to do that necessarily before, but we absolutely will need to do that now. So from a cash flow planning perspective, make sure you've got that covered off. Resources. So our website, if you haven't been to it already, we have a resources section of our website. It has replays of webinars like this. It has cash flow calculators, articles about federal budgets, all that sort of stuff. So please go along to that. We will send you out our cash flow template after as part of the email follow-up. Obviously, there's a whole host of other resources out there from software providers and others that are operating in the business. A little bit of a note there, if the burden of bookkeeping is becoming too much of a hair-pulling exercise for you, Nadia and her team are available, taking new clients all the time. And as you can see from today, she knows her shit, if I can say that word, sorry, when it comes to this space. So I'm going to run our last poll. This is about whether you would like a consultation on any of the things we've covered today, but where I have to. That's happened to me before. Stop sharing. I've got to do this one here, and I can launch it now. Here we go. Um, so, would you like a free consultation to learn more about outsourcing my bookkeeping to an industry specialist like Nadia? Engaging a fractional financial controller, so someone who can sort your WIP world out for you so that you can have reliable monthly reporting. They'll take you through that reporting as well to help you understand the numbers and then help support decisions moving forward. And then we also provide this fractional CFO service as well, where it's a more strategic service. We look across the whole business and we look at where you're traveling and where you want to scale to and support around that. So just a few questions there around consults. We have, as I mentioned, I know we're over time, but we have some more events coming up. This is my last slide, I promise. So we're doing next week, we're going to do some coverage on the budget and what's happening there. We'll give you as much information as we can, but we'll be doing a series of these as we get more of the detail and we can start to give some more advice and tactics around how that's going to work. We're running a strategic planning workshop. It runs over 3 months. We've run that twice now. We're into our third cohort at the moment. If you'd like to build a proper plan for your business and where you're heading with another 10 building and construction business owners as part of that cohort, then we'll send information around about that. Sign up for that one. While we're talking budgets and federal budgets, our next masterclass will be on budgeting for builders and tradies. So we're going to help you work your own budget out. What is going to be your FY27 budget? What should we be considering, and how should we be building that? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Thank you, Nadia. Wonderful as always.
Thank you, Phil.
Hope to see you around the traps, people. Stay safe out there. There's a lot going on. But yeah, have a good day, and we'll hope to see you next time around.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, team. Bye.
Bye.